Well, thank you very much for coming to this Stakeout. Today's meeting, conference meeting was very comprehensive in nature. Not only my briefing, but also the state briefing by UNODC Executive Director Mr. Fedotov and United Nations Office of Counterterrorism Mr. Voronkov came and briefed on their own areas. There were three key issues that were taken up, one on peace, the other on elections, one on the Geneva ministerial planned for November, and there was also issue which was on the on women's issue. I'd say that on the peace was the highest on the agenda. There was, as you know, ceasefire, which had been observed both by the Afghan government and the Taliban. People looked at it with opportunity as well as perhaps indications of hope for peace. And there was almost unanimous call by the member states to Taliban to come and accept the peace offer of the Afghan government. On the elections, people had, there was this kind of plus and minus expectations, but also some concerns. Expectation that with the over 7 million voters having registered, that they were looking to implementation of election on time, but there were some concerns that there should be more preparations and more efforts, more awareness on the part of the Afghan institutions like IEC, Independent Electoral Commission, and also others, including political parties, to be more conscious of their own responsibilities to deliver on the elections with transparency and inclusiveness. The Geneva meeting planned for November had been looked upon as a good opportunity to review the progress that made in Afghanistan for the first half of the transformation decade, by both the international community and the Afghan government. Now, there was also a few countries, quite a large number, who expressed concern about the situation of women, particularly violence against women, and that women should be protected from the violence. I think so I'd stop there, and if there are any questions.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for doing this briefing. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. I wanted to ask you, some people are saying that things have become actually more violent, even in what's viewed as the 17th year of the conflict. So I wanted to ask you, it's reported that up to 10,000 Afghan national security forces were killed in a 12-month period. And I wanted to know, as the UN, some people say 10,000 Taliban, 3,000 civilians. I guess I just wonder, does the UN have a number? Some people say that there's an interest in downplaying the number of Afghan security forces killed in order for recruitment. But in terms of credibility, does the UN have a number? And also, what's your response to it's reported that some people marched from Helmand province all the way to Kabul to protest the lack of peace, maybe the UN's performance, maybe not. Did you engage with them? And what do you make that as a hopeful sign that there's sort of a peace movement of that kind? How do you respond to them? Thank you.
Well, thanks for the two questions. The first question on the number of the casualties, we don't really have the exact number for the soldiers and the Taliban fighters. We take those numbers from the military people because they are the ones who collect those numbers. But we do have numbers for the civilians, and that you do know that we take very rigorous approach to getting the numbers out. And for the 17, we had about 4,000 civilians killed, just less than 4,000. And given the number of soldiers and also Afghan Taliban fighters who sacrificed their lives, which are known to be much greater than that of civilians, the kind of numbers that you have described are probably the right number. It's a huge number, and it could be up to 30,000 people who lose their lives in 17, and that's one of the reasons we think that we cannot have this conflict go on. We really have to save the lives of Afghan people and the sufferings. Now, on the second issue, about the peace march and also the peace tent, it is really a spontaneous move from the grassroots. they are aware that if they wanted to be genuine and to genuinely reflect the voice of the grassroots, that they should not really be sponsored or co-opted by anybody, neither by the government or the insurgents or the international forces or the United Nations, anybody. So they want to stay really, really independent. But they are also in touch with the civil society in Afghanistan, and we really appreciate their movement, because I think it is really the sort of voice of the heart of the Afghan people. So we try to talk to them, but obviously not to make issues of any kind, but really to listen to them, to understand their true voice of their heart. So that's what it is. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Did you say that the Afghan war has been going on for 17 years? Because it's my understanding.
Chinese speaker.
The Afghan war, I think somebody mentioned it was going on for 17 years, but it's my understanding it's been going on since 1992, since the collapse of Najibullah.
Yes, exactly.
And then as far as women's rights are concerned, during the Najibullah government, both girls and boys were required by law to go to school, and women had high positions in the government ministries. Since the collapse of that government, the position of women is horrific, and the entire country has been destabilized for like 22 years or something.
Right. No, sorry. When we say 17 years, this is after the collapse of the Taliban government. That's when the current spate of conflict started. That's why I refer to that period. But you're right. I think we have to look at it much with a longer term perspective. But because particularly under the rule of Taliban, things are really difficult, and there were efforts to try to empower women and to try to also help women from the position they are in terms of how they're treated in society, that the people focus on the recent efforts of 17 years. But you're right, the issue goes back a much, much longer period. But it is one of the most important issues that we are addressing. And obviously not only the United Nations, but people in the international community are really concerned. The good thing about it is that since the current efforts have started after we went in 16 years ago, we took a survey of the Afghan people, and we asked what do they think things have changed with the international efforts and the new efforts of the Afghan government. And they quoted women's issue, the awareness that women has to be treated equally, as the top thing which has changed. And I really notice that when you talk to the leadership in the government, even if you go to the provinces, when you talk to those people who are leading there, who are the active there, the awareness of people about women's position, that they have to be treated equally and they have to be empowered, that girls' education is the most critical thing for society, is seeping through. So it will take time, and Afghanistan is still one of the most difficult places for women to be. But there are awarenesses, and we will do everything possible to address this issue. Yeah. Okay.
Just one follow-up question on this peace movement. Those who marched from Helmand province. Do you think? I guess my question is: do you think that, for example, the offer of the ceasefire by the government and the Taliban taking it are they responding in some way? Do you think that this is a big enough movement that the two forces respond to it? And will they have any presence in the upcoming election, to your knowledge? This sort of, I don't know if they have a political party, but do you think that this is how widespread or mainstream a position do you think it is?
Oh, I see. Well, they're really grassroots movement, really concerned about the peace and the violence. And because it's so genuine, I think everybody's taking it very seriously. It is having impact upon the way I think the government is responding, the way in which the international forces are going to be thinking about the process. Everybody in the political circle is very much aware that it is a genuine movement. And I think Taliban is also very much aware that's why they're reacting so strongly against this movement. Because the voice of people really craving for peace is very strong, very strong. It's a very powerful voice. But thank you.